welcome Ameer Jhan for this podcast. This is a kind of a podcast where I was always waiting for because an open source contributor influencing hundreds of people is no big deal. But giving a webinar and influencing a person like me also makes a big deal because we have never seen containers in that depth. And he did a session for containers for rest of us, and I fell in love with the containers once again. I'd already fell in love with the Docker, but I fell in love with containers once again. I don't know why, but it's happened. So meanwhile, and when you just understand the process of educating yourself, we forget that we are supposed to educate ourselves to the 100%, like to the core. And we basically just go ponder beyond the money and we say that let's just mint some money up with some projects and let's just mint some money up with some other tasks that I'll be doing, then we can do something. Trust me, educate yourself, then go do all your hustle. It's just going to pay you off everything. So I'm with Ameer Jhan, demystifying what is that open source contribution, how to educate yourself to the core, and also never miss this opportunity of listening to him once again because this is a lifetime opportunity to learn something new apart from tech. So thank you, Ameer Jhan, sir, for giving me this podcast. It's an honor for me to have you on my podcast.
Thanks for having me, Vishwa. I'm really excited for all your questions. And yeah, looking forward to share whatever my experience has been the road to this point in my life.
Sure, sure. Let's just start with the question. I just want to ask you like the process of education, right? We have this journey as a student. Now we are a professional. That's a different story. Of course, I think you're going to go for your PhD and other things later. But if you want to go, that's for sure. I want you to go actually. For sure. But like, I want to ask you, like, what's your journey as a student till now? Like, how did you bring out the best version of you as a student? Because we all complain about our education system. This is not good. That is not good. Our teachers are not good. I'm from a tier 3, tier 4 college. What is that? All the nonsense. And I'm like, okay, here there's a person here called as Ameer Jhan. So come and listen to him. So I just want you to say, how was your journey as a student?
Sure. So you trust me, like my journey was very humble. Like till my 10th grade, I hated computers because like we were a humble family and we didn't have a computer at home. So most of my encounters in the computer would be in computer labs, and you like in our schools going to computer lab is like once in a year. They like most of the computer periods, lab periods would be like borrowed by the teachers that they would like take lessons they wouldn't take, like let us to operate on the computer. And so like even till 10th grade, I have no idea how to even open a file because I have no idea how to use the computer itself. So I kind of hated it. And it was my 11th grade. I had to choose a group. Should I go with computer science group or should I go with the biological group? I hated computers, but I was pretty sure that I hated biology more because like I have no idea what biology was. Like I didn't like blood. I didn't cut, like dissecting a frog to name its organs. I was definitely not up for it. So I thought probably let's take a jump, a leap of faith, and let's take like computer, right? And I said to myself like, okay, let's get some pass marks on computers. We're not expecting more here, mostly to the theory. So there I was sitting on the first class of my computer. Uh, I still remember the teacher's name. His name was Kumar. Like he took a single class on C++. Like immediately kind of like drew me towards programming. Even before that point, till that, like programming was kind of memorization for me. If you were to give me any program, I would just like try to memorize as much as possible. Like I would say Scout, input iostream.h, I would like memorize it and write down it in the exam. But he dissected the program, like the programming language in a way that it kind of like opened my eyes and showed me like what I was actually like I can do with programming language. So from my childhood, I was kind of a more of a curious kid, wanted to do a lot of like explore a lot of things, experiment with a lot of stuff. But computer science is kind of a world like the opportunity is limitless. You can do whatever you want with a computer, with just like a laptop, with just like the programming language you're familiar with, right? You just can do whatever you want. That's what I was doing. Like for 10th and 12th, I would just I would just write random programs here and there and stuff like that. I was not much concerned about like how the outer world is, how to prepare ourselves for the outer world. And I did my 12th standard. And in Tamil Nadu, if you are doing your 12th standard, the best way to get into a college, the best way to want to get into like your FANG or anything is that you get good marks in 12th and you get into a great college. Like it could be IIT, it could be, it should be a tier 1 college, maybe a 9 university, stuff like that. I tried my best, but I was not able to qualify for the tier one college. So that was pretty obvious. I went into a humble college, something called MEPCO. So like I see today a lot of them are kind of complaining on colleges that they don't add much value. Like I agree to some level on that. Like they like you might be saying that like no, they are not teaching us the latest stuff. They are not keeping us up to date. They're just giving the basic stuff. But what I have kind of learned over the period of time is that college is not just education. It's the experience that you get with like you meet a lot of people. You share a lot of experience with them. You find a lot of like-minded people. Right? You do a lot of experiment over there. So there also in my college, I like I was an average student. Like whenever there used to be a college festival or something like that, they want a website. Right? I always used to be the first person. Let me do the website. Let me do all the stuff. And I used to take ODs on them and bunk classes. So that's how I learned a lot of stuff. So most of my education, like I would say 30% college gave me, like in terms of the fundamentals college was strong, it helped me. But learning is one thing, but I would highly suggest education is actually you doing stuff. Only when you do stuff, you actually know like what is your style, like whatever you learned, is it like applicable now or is it not applicable now? Like how you can do it better. So the only way I would say in technology or in programming, you should do as much as hands-on as possible in your early days of your career. You'll do as many projects as possible. It can be crappy, it can be useless, but do as much as possible. It just gives you a lot of ideas. Okay. So, and since it's a TAT college, I didn't get any opportunity in FANG. I had no, like, never, Google never came to my campus, Microsoft never came to my campus. And I was about to get placed in CTS, but I did a little fight and I got an internship in a startup and moved on to a startup. Gave up on CTS because CTS, I was pretty sure I don't want to join CTS. And it was a humble startup. Like it was a very small startup called Zauba. I tried to learn as much as possible from there. Then, like this is where I said like the college kicked in, right? The college is not just about the education. Like I had a lot of friends in my college. Like I wouldn't say I had like hundreds of friends. I had a close circle, but the close circle was very reliable. Like they were very like-minded people. So one of my senior in my circle kind of referred me into a company called Quantic. That was my first full-time company. Again, it was not so popular or something like that, but it like that like when people say that I didn't get an opportunity to FANG, I joined a normal company. What would say is that like never underestimate any company. If you join any company, if it is even if it's not a FANG, you will get a lot of things to learn. So you should never blame things on the company. Whatever the company might be, you should just push yourself out of the comfort zone and try to learn as much as possible from the company. Right? Every company has a lot of pain points, right? If you push yourself and solve those pain points, you would learn more than joining a FANG, right? If you join a FANG, you'll be comfortable, you'll be solving small problems here and there. But to join a small company, a normal company, there will be a lot of pain points that are not solved. You push that and try to solve pain points. Even if you don't, you will learn a lot of stuff. So that's how in Quantium, like I had an opportunity to, and also another thing is that when you are joining a company, it is important for you to find a mentor. Right? So I found a few important mentors in my life. One of them was Kanan. Like we are still good friends. He mentored in me in a way that he showed me the right path to success. Like so success is not just you getting the highest pay, or it's not like joining FANG or something like that. The success is you keep learning, you keep your job interesting, right? Even if you join FANG, you do a job that you're not interested or you're wasting your time just doing the same thing again and again. It's useless. So find a job which is keeps you interesting. Like you learn, continuously learn. The day you stop learning, you should switch companies or you should look for other opportunities, right? And he moved on from Quantium. Like we had a good rapport, and what happened? He again referred me into another company called OLX, which was my previous company. Because because of my work, he knew that I might maybe able to make an impact. So I joined there. I learned a lot, a ton over there for a year and a half. I learned a lot. So during this journey, I was able to. I was kind of attending a lot of meetups. I was giving talks, listening to people talk, React Bangalore. So that's when I met another important person in my life. He's again an inspiration for me. A lot of us in India in open source world. He's Sudhanshu Yadav. He's such a humble person. His knowledge is unbeatable when it comes to front end stuff. So I just met him. I share like my that he's my inspiration. We work together, learned a lot from him. And after a year, he referred me into Hacker Rank, and now I'm working in Hacker. So my learning throughout the experience is that it's like don't kind of like worry about your current state. And don't just like feel like, oh, I didn't make it. My friends are in FANG, or my friends made it into a better company, or they're having a better pay, right? Like never ever care about that. Just do what best, whatever with whatever you have, right? You have what you have is what you have. So what you can do is that best with it. Like try to do best with it. Try to learn best with it. Uh, like just don't just don't compare you with others. Just do like compare you with what you were like few days ago. Like maybe like if you see Ameer maybe a year ago, have I learned something after a year? That's what you should see. That's what I think an education, actual education is.
That's true. That's true. Because, in order to win in front of somebody, we lose ourselves.
True.
Because that's the reason where, they still say that India is still a developing country. India is not that developed. GDP of India is very less, and all the nonsense like that. And I feel that somewhere, not that education system, complaining about education system has become the 50% of the reason. And in competitive education system, which is like, if you are okay, you're 90%, come here, just do this work. You are 99%, oh my god, I'm going to give you a seat here, just come here. No, I think that mindset has to be a little of change, because it has to be more of a competitive and more of an kind of an like, are you really eligible for it, kind of a scenario. It should never be like, okay, you come here, I'll just give you come here, said that. Yeah, no, I just wanted to just get to know, like, of course you are giving a lot of events and you are talking in other meetups, you're going for other meetups. I think I have met you in the Reactor meetup, because I think during the 2019 2018 we used to attend a lot of meetups here and there in Bangalore. I think you were also there in the Reactor meetup. I've met many guys
Okay.
who used to come from Tamil Nadu. I think so you are the one which I've
Okay.
met
Okay.
also. I don't know
Okay.
about it. I don't know about it. I think I've met Vivek Raja also during that time. I don't know
Okay.
about it, but yeah, I just want to ask you, like, how was your beginning of the open source contribution? Like, everybody has a story. Like, even the father of open source also has a story. Like, he literally saw how the GNU can be impacting the world, and then Linux Trust will come out with the Linux based on the GNU PSTs and all the licenses that we are seeing right now. So, what was your first encounter in the technology and also in the open source space? Like, what really got you fascinated? Of course, for the technology and programming, you had a sir who literally drove you into the programming. But I want, for an absolute tech and for the absolute open source hustle that you're putting in, what really motivated you?
Sure. So, like as anyone is, like I had a lot of inspirations when I was doing my college, when I was in my internship. So you might have heard about someone called Siddharth Kestrava. So he's from India. He's like he's a huge open source contributor. Like he has done a lot of great stuff. Like there's something called like it's even used by Bootstrap and lot of front end framework. I think it's like bundle size. There are a few other interesting projects he did, right? Like it showed me that like we can do a lot of impact, or like I'm someone who kind of gets joy when someone use my stuff, right? You build something, and if you give it to someone, like it might be applicable to a lot of us. Like you do something and you give it to someone, even if a single soul uses it, you would feel kind of joy in your heart, right? It's unmatched, right? Like it's like you build something and someone enjoy using it, so it's always unbeatable. So that's when I found out, like, okay, it would be great if we build something, and if it's used by some, at least one, it would be great. So that's how I started. And even my start of my open source journey was not any ambitious. I was just thinking, like, let me do anything, I'll push it to GitHub, I'll keep it as a project. Maybe it will help me during my resume process. I'll add the GitHub link, right? Maybe even before at least 2 to 3 years, I had not even a single star in my GitHub repos. None of my repositories had a single star. So, like, it's not like it's not an overnight success that you build something and it gets successful in a day. Nothing happens like that in open source. There are two ways of approaching open source. Either you contribute to some impactful repos, or you build your own, right? So it depends on everyone's taste. If you like existing projects and you want to contribute, you do that. Or if you want to build your own stuff, that is also possible. To contribute to other repos, you need a lot of patience, you need a lot of people skills, because it's a hit or miss for huge reports, right? You do a contribution, yeah, like the maintainer may accept it, may not accept it, depending on the roadmap of the report. So you need to have a lot of patience. You need to have a lot of skills, just more, not just code. Right? Building your own open source project is a little bit straightforward, because you have any problem, you build a tool for it, you push it to GitHub, you get stars, you get people interested. It's a bonus. If not, you use it for yourself. That's how Kubelay started. Like Kubelay was one of my first popular project, where I was actually I was actually learning Kubernetes during my quantum period. The mentor I said, Kannan, actually pushed me to, like, we had a scaling problem. We wanted to explore Kubernetes. He said, learn Kubernetes. I was learning Kubernetes and I found some issues. So I thought, let me build some tool. Maybe I will use it. And then I posted in Reddit and everyone loved it. Everyone started to use it. Like even some of them use even today. So another project I did, fun project, Blaze Pack, which where I actually felt a need of running code sandbox locally. So I did it. I thought I will use it locally for my side projects, and some of them liked it and they used it. So open source is nothing but just building, sharing, and contributing back to whatever repo you actually use. Like whenever you are using some open source project, you find any issues, you file it or you send a PR. Be humble when you report the issues or when you send a PR. That's all about is open source, right? So that's how my journey has been. And like what I would share from my experience is that don't go behind stars, or don't go behind what I would say adoption. Go behind impact. Right? You build something, and if even a single soul uses and it is bringing a lot of impact to their project, that's good. And there are a lot of small tools that are used by, like, just very small tool used by a lot of impactful projects. Like if you take Webpack, there are hundreds of packages, small packages which are written by a lot of people, and it's used by them. Right? Webpack is wholly like very impactful. So it is like a kind of chain, right? You build something, it can be used by someone that can be used by someone. So it's a chain. So that's the awesome part about open source.
Yeah, because you told a lot about the consequence of building it. But sometimes the problem is starting it.
Sure.
Starting is a problem, like we want to code something which is amazing. I always say this, everybody has $1 billion idea. Even I do have it. My father has it, my mother has it. But can we bring it to an execution? Because trust me, because I'm like sick and tired of like even listening to a lot of online meets these days only. Like
Okay.
I want to make an impactful project. So the beginning actually really makes an impact. Like as long as your beginning is very humble and you're very fruitful learning, until and unless
Mhm.
that you won't be able to achieve it. Like how to begin a problem state, how to understand it, and how to begin the project. That's my question.
Right. Sure. So, like, lot of a huge mistake I did during my like initial journey is that, like, I would give a lot of time to perfection, like, or a lot of time to learn, or like a lot of try to solve all the unknowns as much as possible before even starting a project. Like I would hesitate, like there is some unknown, let's not start the project. Like we need to do all these stuffs. It's gonna take a lot of time and stuff like that. So like my simplest advice is that whenever you want to start a project and you're not sure what its future might be, just build the most simplest and most stupid and simple solution, right? Don't don't spend time in writing tests, or don't spend time in formatting the code, don't spend time in linting the code. No, those are all those are all when you have actual customers, the code matters. You have beautiful code but no one is using, doesn't matter, right? So like, and if you think like, okay, I need to do a project, for this I need to learn Node.js, let's learn Node.js and write this. No, you should learn Node.js by doing the project. That's how it should be. You don't learn a Node.js and start the project. Learning Node.js never happens, so the project never happens. So even if you have hundreds of unknowns, start with something that you already know. Slowly, like, right, keep improving on the project. You slowly, squash all the unknowns, and end of the day, you have a minimum viable product. It can have a lot of bugs. That's okay, but that would give you an idea whether like people will be using it or not, whether you will be yourself using it or not. Okay, during this initial phase of the project, you should make zero assumption on how people will use the product, or people will like it or not, right? So one mistake I always did in my early days was I would make a lot of assumption on how people would use my product or what are the requirements that people might have, right? So keep the requirement as simple as possible. keep a lot of open ends so that you get feedback. Let people use it. If people don't like it, then probably abandon it and probably start a new project. If it becomes irrelevant, that's okay. You learn something and it became irrelevant. That's okay. Like people using it is just a bonus. But you built it and you learned it. That is what the actual point is. And if you get a feedback, you improve on it, and then keep improving the code. If a lot of people use it, try add test, because when a lot of people contribute, that's when the test becomes useful. Test is useful when a lot of people contribute and you want to ensure that no one breaks anything. So that's when you start writing tests. You slowly groom the code, you add code formatting, you add linting, you add some standards and stuff like that. So that's how one of my Blaze Spec projects started. When I started, like when I published to the world, it had a single file. A single file had underlines of code, no code formatting, no best practices, nothing. It just was a proof of concept of whether I was able to run Sandpack or not in my local. Shared it with the world. It had a lot of problems, but the initial response to the project was huge. Everyone was like, "It was great. It is great. Let me use it. I may use it for my next project." That's when I realized, okay, there are a lot of holes in this. Let's improve it. So that's why I probably sat for a night, closed all the holes, like try to improve it, at least for someone who start using it, like who's just installing it. He should have a blissful experience, a pleasing experience, and he should share it with his friend. Then people started contributing. That's when I thought, like, let's write some tests, because people are interested in contributing, and slowly now it's in a good shape. But if you see the initial commit, it is total garbage. Okay,
Yeah,
so that's
that's
how
true.
you approach.
That's true, because like sometimes we fear the requirements that might pop up.
Right.
Like, okay, I've written this many amount of code, will people really use it? And we forget the fact that I should be satisfied because I should be able to use it. And
Yep.
like writing an open source is no big deal, because everybody has a GitHub repo and everybody can push their code, and everybody has an account in PyPy and PM, that's for sure. But like making an impact, like of course you making the first impact to yourself on your work. I think the Postman also started in the similar way. He wanted to just automate the testing, and now it's a multi-million-dollar business to him right now.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. But like, I want to ask you the impact of open source. You have been open sourcing
Mhm.
for a while, and you have seen the fall and also the pros of it. Pros and the cons of all the open source contribution. And you have also worked in different firms, whether it's a startup, whether it's in HackerRank. Of course, you are a senior SD3 now. So there's nothing to talk about it, because, of course, it speaks all your hard work paid off. But like, I just want to ask you, like, we all have an humble beginning, we all have this thing, but like, making an impact in somebody's life is also true. But how far is open source impacting our lives today? Like, according to you, how far has it reached to the people? And how are companies adopting it in their firms? So I just want to know about that.
Yeah, sure. So if the best impact that GitHub can have on yourself, first of all, let's start with ourselves, right? If you are a GitHub, you have good decent GitHub profile, you do a lot of open source contribution. The first impact that's gonna be on you is that you learn a lot of stuff, right? And you eventually you will come to a realization is that, like there's a myth that there is always someone who is smarter than us, who can who will arrive at the solution right in a single go, right? Like the best code is like there are someone who can write the best code in like out of the box, just in the first try, right? There's nothing like that. Everyone thinks in the same way that you do, I do. Okay, so no one around, like everything that is built today is built by someone who is not smarter than us, right? Like they were smart as so it's important to keep trust on us, be confident, right? And while you do a lot of open source contribution, you write code, you read code, you get to know what are, like, you get to know that there are trade-offs. Whatever you do, there are trade-offs, right? Like you build the best projects, there's always going to be a competitor who's going to try to do better, but he's going to also have some problems. So by reading open source code, you understand, how we can write better code. That's a huge impact it's gonna have on you, right? Like whenever you're gonna do, you would immediately relate to a design that you saw in another project, right? Or at least a project structure. The minimal you can get out of any open source project is that you get an idea that, okay, most of the open source projects follow this folder structure. So must mean something. So I can also follow the same for my project or whatever project I'm doing at work, right? That's one impact. The second impact is that it can attract a lot of job opportunities, right? Like literally everyone today recruiting on LinkedIn. All the good companies that are recruiting on LinkedIn and any other social media are looking for two things. One is your GitHub contribution. One is how active are you on social media, right? Like the only way for you to get good job in a huge crowd is to stand out of the crowd. Crowd. In that case, like GitHub is a kind of a ladder. You can climb it as much as high as you want, and you're gonna get a lot of exposure from it. Right? Like yeah, like I'm telling you that like all the companies that I got, except maybe Quantium, like OLX, Flipper, and HackerRank, were because of my GitHub profile, right? Like that's what actually I worked with Sudhanshu on an open source project. That's how he knew that okay, I have a better way of thinking. I have a better way of writing code. I have a better way of contributing to something. That's how he felt maybe he can also add some value to HackerRank. So the second impact is that you get to know some great people, like-minded people, and you also can land a lot of good job opportunities, right? Like because a lot of companies today they actually look on GitHub to actually hire you.
Yeah, I know, but like organizations are coming out with a huge demand. Like, let it be like a simple left code. I think there was an npm package called the left code. I think so. It was
Mm-hmm.
just 11 lines of code, and the maintainer shut it down. And
Okay.
the millions of npm packages which were relying on it were like shut down over the shutting down that one package. That's what it is. Like, I want to ask you, like, how is company adopting it? Like, company not in process of recruitment, but in a process of development. Like, AKS is almost an open source. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's an open source technology right now. Like, not like open source, like you get an access to the entire production system, but you get an access to that chunk of like functionality and things like that. So what is the company's adoption on the open source?
Right. Got it. So, there is the one biggest con of open source is that it's a distributed responsibility. Right. There is no single point of responsibility. In open source, it's about responsibility of events. Like you said, like I'm gonna make my Zoom chat share to everyone. It was not just your responsibility; it was everyone's responsibility to remain decent and ensure that everyone has a good day, right? But in open source, that like no, there is no central gatekeeper, right? That actually gives a lot of positives, that a lot of people, there is no gatekeeping, so whoever whatever want, he can do whatever impact he can make. At the same time, like you can't avoid anyone messing around with others, right? That's how the npm package happened, right? We nowadays npm doesn't allow you to unpublish it, but still, a lot of people push malicious code to npm, which are used by a lot of big projects. There was an incident where there was a package where a maintainer came around saying that I will maintain this package. He pushed some malicious code. VS Code got infected. A lot of popular editors got infected, right? So open source obviously has some security issues. Like it's not like you can you can trust everything. So it's always that you make a calculated risk. All the companies, when they choose open source, or when they want open source, they do a calculated risk, right? So let's say if you have a company which was depending on Flow, right? Flow was open source. It was a good competitive TypeScript. And a few weeks ago, they announced that Flow is not going to be more of a, like, it's going to be open source, but it would be more biased towards Facebook's requirement. It's not going to be more towards people's requirement. You can file issues, but unless it doesn't fall on their roadmap, they are not going to implement it, right? So you might argue that, like, if someone is solving for Facebook, it should be solving for everyone, but it may not be the case for everyone. Everyone has different needs. So depending on open source is kind of walking on a knife. You just need to know how to balance it, or taking the right risk at the right time. If you see, everyone today uses React, right? There is, you can never say that Facebook can come tomorrow and say the same with React. Like, we are going to close React for open contributions. We're going to keep it on Facebook's roadmap. It will still remain React, but it would be like more biased towards Facebook's requirement, right? Facebook can tell that because that's their project, right? But a lot of them still use React. So when choosing open source project, companies ensure that how trustworthy those open source projects are. That's why if you see, a lot of companies go with React because it's used by a huge organization, Facebook. They can trust that it's going to go for long and long. It's going to maintain as long as possible, right? But no offense for Vue. Vue is equally used, but like lot like there's a slight bias on maintainability that because of Facebook maintains it. Someone sees it's a con also, but a lot of them see it as a pro and they choose React, right? So companies actually choose it in a way that they always compare, like choose three metrics. One is how well maintained it is, and how often it gets a security uh, risk on the package, and the third thing is how reliable it is. Like like how who is maintaining it, how many developers are there, is it well funded, how many of them are sponsoring it, and all those stuff they do consider.
Yeah, that's true. That's true because TensorFlow was open sourced in 2015 and it became a really big shock to the world. It was an internal
Mhm.
project for Google for quite a while. And I was adamant to the fact that TensorFlow was there, even though I saw the Google I/O. TensorFlow
Mhm.
is open source now. Anybody can use it. And I was like, okay, what can I do? And 2017, I came to the engineering and I still remember Facebook had a meme material. Facebook's
Mhm.
AI chatbots or the machine learning models can talk in their own language. And they shut down that research. I think it was 2017. Yes, I remember that. I still remember that it was 2017. And yeah, and later on, 6 months later, they came out with this quantum neural network pack. And I was like shocked. What is happening in the industry right now? And I was like, oh my God, open source has a whole new level of like disruption. Like it can really, really impact your project. Few open sources, there are hundreds and thousands of developers apart from your cubicles can develop it. I think probably open source is something which is great. I think Amir sir just give a talk on Azure Developer India community on open source contribution, and I'll be hosting it, and I'll also make sure that other people also host it in their community chapters, and we will have one open source talk from you, like how to contribute to NPM package. We'll do that. We'll do that for sure. Thank you so much, sir. This was an amazing podcast, and trust me, this is my first open source, not actually first open source, but like the full stack open source contributor podcast. Like I never did this. I had done with a data scientist and an open source contributor. I think this is one which I really wanted. Thank you so much, sir. Thank
Mhm.
you so much.
No, it's great to be talking with you, Vishwa. Thanks for having me. It was like kind of very much it kindled a lot of good memories from my past that I had. Thanks.